Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku was trained by the League of Villains to rule the world. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The air on the rooftop was thin and cold, a stark contrast to the fire that had just been extinguished in Izuku Midoriya's soul. The steam rolling off the skeletal man before him was the smoke from the funeral pyre of his dreams. All Might, the symbol of peace, the pillar of his entire existence, was gone. In his place stood a gaunt, hollow-cheeked man with sunken eyes that held not a hero's fire, but the weary resignation of a dying ember. So no. I honestly don't think you can be a hero without a quirk. The words, spoken with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of 1,000 battles, did not just pierce Izuku's heart. They were a demolition charge, detonating at the very foundation of his being. The world, once a vibrant tapestry of heroic potential and dazzling primary colors, bleached to a monochrome gray. The roar of the city below became a distant, meaningless hum. Izuku's mouth opened, but only a choked, pathetic gasp escaped. His mind, usually a whirlwind of analysis and frantic note-taking, was a perfect, silent vacuum. He could feel the All Might-themed notebook, its pages slightly scorched from Bakugo's earlier assault, digging into his ribs from his backpack. It felt like a block of lead. A tombstone. All Might, or the man who was All Might, seemed to sense the depth of the devastation he had wrought. A flicker of something, pity perhaps, or guilt, crossed his face. He coughed, a wet, rattling sound, and a speck of blood appeared at the corner of his lips. He wiped it away with the back of a bony hand. "Look, kid," he began, his voice softer now, but no less damning. "I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm being realistic. This is a dangerous line of work. It's not just about stopping purse snatchers. It's about facing down monsters, villains with quirks designed for nothing but destruction. Pro-heroes are constantly risking their lives. I have to risk my life every single day." He gestured to the grotesque, starburst-shaped scar that dominated his torso. "This is what it costs. This is what a real fight looks like." Could you, a quirkless boy, step in between a villain and a civilian and survive? No. You'd just be a liability. You'd be another person for the real heroes to save. Each word was a meticulously placed brick, walling Izuku off from his future. Liability. Another person to save. He wasn't just useless, he was a potential burden, the very thing he wanted to prevent, he would become. But I'm not useless." The words finally tore from his throat, raw and desperate. His knuckles were white where he gripped the straps of his backpack. "I study heroes. I analyze quirks. I can find weaknesses. I can help people. I can save people with a smile, just like you. I just want to help." His voice cracked on the last word, the childish hope in it sounding absurd even to his own ears. He saw it in All Might's eyes, the finality. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a verdict. Saving people with a smile is the ideal, kid. It's the face you put on to keep them from panicking, All Might said, his voice flat. Behind the smile is the power to back it up, the power to ensure that you're the one left standing. Without that, it's just a nice dream. And dreams don't stop rampaging villains. He turned towards the rooftop door. It's not wrong to dream, just make sure your dreams are attainable. Realistic. You could be a police officer. They get a bad rap, but they're fine people who do a lot of good, even if they're often looked down upon for cleaning up our messes. He didn't even look back. The door clanged shut, the sound echoing in the sudden, profound silence. Izuku stood there. For how long, he didn't know. A minute? An hour? Time had lost all meaning. The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, colors he would normally have found beautiful, but now they just looked like a spreading bruise. His legs gave out. He didn't fall so much as fold, his knees hitting the gritty concrete of the roof with a dull thud. The pain was a distant sensation, a ship signaling from a foreign shore. The notebook, his life's work, felt like a mockery. All those pages, all that analysis, all that devotion, for what? To be told his dream was unattainable by the very man who inspired it. He remembered Bakugo's words from earlier that day, spat with casual, explosive cruelty. If you want to be a hero so bad, why don't you take a swan dive off the roof and pray for a quirk in your next life? His eyes, blank and unfocused, drifted towards the low railing at the edge of the building. It was just a few steps away. A single, simple action. A swan dive. The thought wasn't born of anger or a desire for revenge. It was a cold, logical conclusion. His life had a singular purpose, a central pillar holding everything up. That pillar had just been pulverized. What was left was a collapsing ruin. If his existence was defined by his dream, and that dream was impossible, then what was the point of his existence? He was a variable in an equation that could never be solved. A null set. A Deku. He rose, his movements stiff and robotic, like a puppet whose strings had been cut and then clumsily reattached. He took a step towards the edge. Then another. The wind whipped at his dark green hair, pulling tears from his eyes that he wasn't consciously shedding. The city lights began to flicker to life below, a galaxy of possibilities, none of which were for him. He placed his hands on the cool metal of the railing. He could feel the vibrations of the city through it, the thrum of a million lives moving forward while his had come to a dead stop. He pulled his worn-out red shoes off, placing them neatly side by side, just as he had seen in movies. A final, tidy act in a messy, pointless life. He looked down. It was a long way. But it felt quiet. Peaceful. An end to the striving, the hoping, the constant, aching disappointment. An end to being Deku. He swung one leg over the railing. Then the other. He stood on the narrow ledge, the wind threatening to tear him away. He closed his eyes. He thought of his mother, and a sharp, stabbing pain finally broke through the numbness. He imagined her face when she heard the news. The thought was an agony, but even it felt distant. He was sorry. He was so sorry. But what else was there to do? Excuse me, young man? Are you admiring the view, or just planning on making a mess for the heroes to clean up? The voice was smooth, like aged whiskey and cigar smoke. It was calm, conversational, and utterly unexpected. Izuku's eyes snapped open. He teetered on the edge, his heart, which he thought had stopped beating, hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He looked back over his shoulder. A swirling, purple-black mist had coalesced in the center of the rooftop, a tear in the fabric of reality. From it, a man in a sharp, tailored suit was stepping out. He was lanky, with a face that seemed constructed of angles and shadows, a cigarette held loosely between his fingers. He wasn't looking at Izuku with alarm or pity, but with a detached, professional curiosity, like a connoisseur examining a piece of art. "Pardon the intrusion," the man said, taking a slow drag from his cigarette. The cherry flared, briefly illuminating his shrewd eyes. "My employer is a man who appreciates potential." He happened to be observing the recent unpleasantness with the sludge creature. "Your analysis, your reckless charge, it was quite the display. A foolish, suicidal display, but one driven by a fascinatingly pure instinct." Izuku stared, speechless. Who was this man? How had he appeared? A warped quirk? "My name is Jiren," the man continued, exhaling a plume of smoke that was swallowed by the wind. "And my employer believes that talent, true talent, shouldn't be defined by something as arbitrary as a quirk. He believes that a brilliant mind is a far rarer and more valuable commodity than simple brute force." Every word was a carefully aimed dart, striking the raw, exposed nerves of Izuku's soul. Talent. Brilliant mind. Valuable. Words he had never, not once, heard directed at himself. "All Might doesn't agree, I take it?" Jiren asked, a smirk playing on his lips. The symbol of peace, the man who sells hope like a cheap commodity, had none to spare for you. "I'm not surprised. His brand is built on the simple, the powerful, the obvious. Nuance is bad for business." Izuku couldn't speak. He just clung to the railing, his body trembling. This man was speaking a language of cynical truth that resonated with the fresh, gaping wound in his chest. "My employer," Jiren said, taking a step closer, his shoes making a soft scuffing sound on the concrete, "wants to make you an offer. Not a place as a sidekick. Not a consolation prize in the police force. He wants to offer you a purpose. A chance to use that magnificent brain of yours to actually change the world, not just play act at saving it, change the world. The phrase echoed in the void where his dream used to be. All Might had told him to be realistic. This man was offering him the impossible. Who is your employer? Izuku finally managed to whisper, his voice hoarse. Jiren smiled, a genuinely charming, utterly predatory smile. He is a man who understands that the systems we live in, hero society included, are fundamentally broken, and the only way to fix something that is truly broken is to take it apart, piece by piece, and build something better in its place. He wants to know if you'd be interested in being the architect of a new world. The offer was insane. It was villainous. A month ago, an hour ago, Izuku would have recoiled in horror. He would have screamed for a hero. But a hero had already been here. And he had left Izuku for dead. He looked down at the street below, at the ant-like cars and people. Then he looked at Jiren, at the swirling portal of unknown darkness behind him, and the hand that was now extended towards him. He had two choices. A quick, certain end on the pavement below, or an uncertain beginning through that dark doorway. Despair versus a sliver of terrifying, illicit hope. The validation he craved, offered not by the light, but by the shadow it cast. His hands were shaking as he let go of the railing. He swung his legs back over, his bare feet touching the gritty roof. He didn't bother putting his shoes back on. He was leaving that part of himself behind. He walked past the neatly placed red sneakers, a monument to a boy who no longer existed. He took Jiren's hand. It was cool and dry. A wise choice, Jiren murmured, his smile widening. He led Izuku towards the portal. Don't worry. We appreciate potential. We won't let it go to waste. The purple mist enveloped him. It didn't feel cold or hot, just empty. A sensation of being pulled apart and put back together in the space of a single, silent heartbeat. He stumbled out the other side and found himself in a place that defied all his expectations. It was a bar. It was dimly lit, impeccably clean, and smelled faintly of antiseptic and old wood. There were no rowdy thugs or cackling madmen. The only other occupants were a man made of the same purple mist as the portal, who was calmly polishing a glass behind the bar, and a younger man with shaggy, pale blue hair hunched over the counter, scratching furiously at his neck. The scratchy-haired man looked up, his red eyes narrowed with irritation. Jiren, you brought a kid? He smells like a pathetic hero worshipper. Is this another one of your trash mobs? Patience, Tamura Shigaraki, Jiren said smoothly, ignoring the insult. This is a special acquisition. A personal project for Sensei. The name Sensei made Shigaraki fall silent, though his scratching intensified, a dry, rasping sound in the quiet room. Izuku stood awkwardly, his mind still trying to process the impossible transition. He was in a villain's hideout. He had come here willingly. The reality of his decision was beginning to crash down on him, a delayed tidal wave of fear and adrenaline. A television screen behind the bar, previously dark, flickered to life. It displayed only an audio waveform, a green line that pulsed in time with the voice that emerged from the speakers. The voice was not what he expected. It wasn't deep or monstrous. It was calm, cultivated, and deeply resonant, like a professor or a beloved doctor. It carried an inherent authority that was both soothing and terrifying. Izuku Midoriya. Welcome. I apologize for the unconventional invitation. Izuku flinched at the sound of his name. You know who I am? I make it my business to know about individuals of interest. The voice replied. I was watching you today. Your analysis of the heroes on the scene was, for a boy your age, exceptionally insightful. You identified Kamui Wood's weakness to fire and Mount Lady's limitations in enclosed spaces within seconds. And then, your actions, charging a villain that had stalled pro-heroes, all to save a boy who has done nothing but torment you. That is a fascinating, almost pathological, altruism. Tell me, what did the symbol of peace have to say about such a display? The question was gentle, but it landed like a physical blow. Izuku's throat closed up. The memory of the rooftop, of All Might's skeletal form and dismissive words, flooded back. He told me to be realistic. Izuku mumbled, staring at the floor. He said I couldn't be a hero. Of course he did, the voice said, with no hint of surprise. There was a soft sigh from the speakers. He is a symbol, Izuku. A product. And the product he sells is the lie that power equals righteousness, the lie that if you are strong enough, you can solve any problem. It's a simple, comforting narrative, and it has made him a very wealthy and beloved man. But it is a lie. Izuku looked up at the screen, his eyes wide. Did he tell you why he believes this? Did he show you his weakness? The voice continued, its tone becoming more intimate, more conspiratorial. Did he show you the grievous injury that has reduced the mighty All Might to a shadow of his former self? A man who can barely maintain his heroic form for a few hours a day? A man who hides his frailty behind a manufactured smile, yet dares to judge you for a weakness you were born with. The hypocrisy is breathtaking, is it not? Izuku staggered back a step. How could he know that? He had thought that was a secret he alone now shared with the #1 hero. How? Information is power, my boy. A far more reliable power than bulging muscles, the voice said. The waveform on the screen pulsed gently. But All Might is merely a symptom of the disease. The disease is the society that created him. Let us analyze it, shall we? You enjoy analysis. The voice shifted, taking on the quality of a lecturer, and Izuku, despite himself, found his mind instinctively snapping to attention. Consider your mother. A lovely woman with a minor telekinetic quirk. She loves you dearly, I have no doubt. But she lives in a state of constant, low-level anxiety, does she not? Worried about villain attacks, worried about your quirklessness, worried about your future. In a world policed by titans like All Might, has any hero ever knocked on your door to reassure her? To offer counseling? To provide a tangible sense of security beyond their own televised battles? No. The hero system doesn't care about the quiet suffering of the masses. It only cares about the grand, marketable spectacle of conflict. Izuku thought of his mother, of her perpetual apologies, her tear-filled eyes when the doctor had given them the news. The voice was right. She was always scared. No hero had ever made that go away. And what of Katsuki Bakugo? The voice went on, its tone hardening slightly. A boy with a powerful, flashy quirk. Aggressive. Arrogant. He has tormented you, physically and psychologically, for a decade. He has used his quirk on you, an act that is technically illegal. He has encouraged your suicide. Where were the heroes then, Izuku? Where were the teachers, the authorities who are meant to uphold the rules of this society? They were not there. In fact, they praised him. They saw his power and aggression not as a character flaw, but as heroic potential. Your society doesn't punish the strong for preying on the weak. It rewards them. It cultivates them. Bakugo is not an outlier. He is a proto-hero, the perfect product of a system that worships power above all else. The logic was cold, sharp, and undeniable. It fit the pieces of his life together in a way he had never considered. He had always seen Bakugo's treatment as a personal failure on his part. This voice was reframing it as a systemic feature. It is a system built on hypocrisy, Izuku. A popularity contest disguised as public service. Heroes endorse products. They worry about their rankings. Their primary motivation is not justice, but fame and wealth. They maintain the status quo, this endless, cyclical battle of good versus evil, because it is profitable. It keeps them necessary. They have no interest in solving the root causes of villainy, poverty, alienation, quirk discrimination. Why would they? To do so would be to make themselves obsolete. The voice paused, letting the weight of the words settle in the silent bar. Shigaraki was watching Izuku now, his scratching stopped, his red eyes burning with a strange intensity. The misty man, Kurojiiri, continued to polish his glass, his yellow eyes unreadable. You see the flaws, don't you, Izuku? The voice murmured, becoming gentle again. Your notebooks are filled with it. You analyze heroes not just to admire them, but to understand them. To deconstruct them. Deep down, you know the system is a sham. You just lack the context to articulate it. You thought the answer was to become a part of it, to be a true hero like All Might. But you cannot fix a rotten foundation by building another floor on top of it. You must tear the whole structure down. Izuku was trembling, not from fear, but from a terrifying, exhilarating revelation. It was as if he had spent his life staring at a single, complex image, and this voice had just told him how to shift his perspective, revealing an entirely different picture hidden within. A darker, truer picture. All Might rejected you because you are quirkless, the voice stated, the final nail in the coffin of his old dream. I, on the other hand, I see your quirklessness as your greatest asset. You have never been able to rely on innate power. So you cultivated your mind. You learned to observe, to analyze, to strategize. While others were training their muscles, you were training the most powerful weapon of all. A hero's body can be broken. All Might is living proof of that. But a mind like yours can move mountains, topple governments, and reshape the world. The praise was so absolute, so intoxicating, it left him lightheaded. Everything he had been mocked for, everything he considered a hallmark of his own inadequacy, this entity was lauding as a weapon of immense power. I am not offering you the chance to be a hero, Izuku Midoriya, the voice said, its pitch lowering to one of finality and immense promise. That is a hollow, childish dream sold on lunchboxes and television screens. I am offering you the chance to be a savior. A true savior. To be the architect of a new world order, one built not on the arbitrary lottery of quirks, but on logic, stability, and true equality. A world where a boy like you would be celebrated, not scorned. I am offering you a purpose. The room was silent. Izuku's breath hitched. He looked down at his own shaking hands. The hands of a useless Deku. Or the hands of an architect? He thought of All Might's face, etched with pity and dismissal. He thought of Bakugo's sneer, the explosions in his palm. He thought of his mother's tears. He thought of the endless years of being nothing, of striving for a goal that the world, and now his own idol, had deemed impossible. The hero's society had failed him. It had failed his mother. It had failed to see his worth. It was a lie. A beautiful, colorful, wonderful lie, but a lie nonetheless. And he was done believing in it. He lifted his head, and for the first time, his eyes weren't filled with tears or desperation. They were cold. They were clear. He looked at the pulsing green line on the screen, the representation of the only person in his entire life who had looked at him and seen value. What do I have to do? Izuku asked. His voice was quiet, but it didn't tremble. It was the sound of a lock clicking into place. A low, pleased chuckle emanated from the speakers, a sound that seemed to vibrate in the very marrow of his bones. For now you will learn. You will grow. You will shed the skin of the boy who wished for a power he did not have, and embrace the man who can command the world with the power he already possesses. The name Deku dies tonight. Your training begins tomorrow. The screen went black. A new purpose settled over him, cold and heavy and absolute. The dream of being a hero was dead, buried on a lonely rooftop under a bruised sky. But here, in the quiet dark of a villain's bar, something new, something terrible and brilliant, was about to be born from its ashes. He would be reforged. The first month was a symphony of pain. Izuku learned that there were 1,000 different kinds of agony, each with its own texture, rhythm, and lesson. There was the sharp, clean sting of a training knife slipping past his guard and tracing a crimson line on his arm. There was the deep, throbbing ache in his bones after being thrown to the concrete floor for the 17th time in an hour. There was the searing burn in his lungs as he was forced to run until his vision swam with black spots, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. His primary physical instructor was a wiry man named Kaido, a disgraced Special Forces soldier with a minor quirk that let him harden his skin to the consistency of packed leather. He was a sadist in the purest sense of the word, but a brutally effective teacher. He never addressed Izuku by name, only as asset or scrap. Pain is a message, scrap, Kaido would grunt, standing over a winded Izuku. Right now, it's telling you that your guard is sloppy, your footwork is pathetic, and you rely on your eyes too much. Listen to it. Learn from it. Or it will be the last message you ever receive. Izuku listened. He learned. The tears he shed in the first week, born of agony and exhaustion, quickly dried up. Crying was an inefficient use of energy and oxygen. Complaining was a waste of breath. His mind, the only part of him that felt truly his own, began to compartmentalize. The pain became data. A cut on his forearm was a tactile reminder of a flawed parry. The bruise blooming on his ribs was an indicator of a predictable dodge pattern. He was not being trained to be a brawler. All for One had been explicitly clear on that point. Shigaraki was the sledgehammer. Izuku was to be the scalpel. His training wasn't about winning a fistfight. It was about surviving long enough for his intellect to win the war. He learned to use his small, agile frame to his advantage. He mastered joint locks, choke holds, and the precise application of force to a knee or an elbow to cripple, not conquer. His main weapon was a simple combat knife. He spent hundreds of hours practicing, not just slashes and stabs, but how to throw it with deadly accuracy, how to use its reflective surface to check corners, how to brace it against his forearm to block a heavier blow. His body, once soft and unremarkable, began to change. The baby fat melted away, replaced by lean, corded muscle. His posture straightened. His hands became calloused. Scars, thin and white, began to crisscross his arms and back, a roadmap of his failures and his subsequent corrections. The frantic, nervous energy that had always defined him was hammered out on the anvil of Kaido's relentless training, leaving behind a stillness, a coiled readiness that was far more dangerous. But the physical torment was only one half of his reforging. The true crucible was the time he spent with his new master. His mental training took place in a sterile white room, furnished with only a table, 2 chairs, and a large holographic display. All for One, still a disembodied voice from a speaker, was his sole tutor. These sessions were the inverse of his physical training. Where Kaido sought to break his body, Sensei sought to build his mind into an unassailable fortress. The greatest lie hero society perpetuates is that morality is simple, the calm, resonant voice explained one afternoon, as holographic text scrolled in the air between them. They present the world as a comic book panel, good versus evil, black and white. It is a comforting fiction for a simple-minded populace, but it is a crippling handicap for a leader. Izuku, his fingers flying across the keys of a datapad, nodded. His notebooks were gone. They were analog, inefficient, and a sentimental link to a past he was being taught to despise. Now, his analyses were digital, encrypted, and infinitely more complex. The pages once filled with adoring sketches of All Might were now home to detailed flowcharts illustrating the logistical weaknesses of Japan's 5 largest hero agencies. True morality, All for One continued, is a calculus of outcomes. An action is not inherently good or evil. It is either beneficial or detrimental to one's ultimate objective. Saving one child from a burning building is seen as a heroic act. But what if, in doing so, you allow the arsonist to escape, who then goes on to burn down an orphanage, killing 30 children? Was your initial action still good? Or was it a catastrophic failure of prioritization, born of sentimentality? The lessons were relentless. They read Sun Tzu, Machiavelli, and Clausewitz. They studied the rise and fall of empires, the strategies of history's greatest generals and most reviled tyrants. They moved on to modern subjects, economic theory, psychological warfare, the weaponization of social media, and the exploitation of political systems. Izuku learned how a single, carefully fabricated news story could incite a riot, how manipulating a specific stock could defund a hero's corporate sponsor, how public perception was a battlefield as vital as any city street. His mind, already a sponge for information, soaked it all in. He had spent his life analyzing quirks. Now he was analyzing the very framework of society, and he found it to be as fragile and full of weaknesses as any B-list hero. His old notebooks became a subject of study themselves. All for One had him digitize every page. Look at this, Sensei's voice directed, pulling up Izuku's entry on Eraserhead. Your analysis is superb. You identified his reliance on sight, the operational limits of his quirk, his fighting style's weakness against multiple opponents. But your conclusion was, he would be even more amazing with better public relations. You saw a flaw and your instinct was to fix it for him. To help him. The screen flickered, and Izuku's own handwriting was overlaid with red text. A tool is not to be fixed, the voice said, cold and instructive. It is to be used or broken. Eraserhead's weakness is not something to be patched. It is a vulnerability to be exploited, a flashbang grenade at the right moment. A villain with a mutation that obscures their eyes. An attack on his students to draw him into an unwinnable fight. Do you see the difference, my boy? You are a fan. I am teaching you to be a king. Kings do not admire their enemies' strengths. They exploit their weaknesses without mercy. The shift in perspective was seismic. It was a constant, grueling process of unlearning a lifetime of empathy, of reframing his core desire to save people into something grander and more terrible. He wasn't saving individuals. He was saving society from itself. And the salvation he would offer required a baptism of fire. As the one-year anniversary of his recruitment approached, Izuku was a different person. The stutter was gone, replaced by a precise, economical mode of speech. The downcast, apologetic eyes were now level and unnervingly analytical. He moved with a quiet confidence that bordered on predatory. He had been broken down to his constituent parts. A brilliant mind and a desperate need for purpose, and rebuilt into a weapon. One evening, he was summoned not to the training room or the study, but to a dark, cold chamber deep within the League's headquarters. For the first time, he was to meet his sensei in person. The man was a ruin. He sat on a throne-like medical chair, a terrifying network of tubes and pipes connecting him to life support machinery that hissed and whirred in the gloom. His face, or what was left of it, was a nightmarish landscape of scar tissue, with no discernible eyes, nose, or lips. He was the inverse of All Might. Where the hero's true form was a skeleton, All for One's was a testament to a body that refused to die. Come closer, Izuku, the voice said, no longer filtered through a speaker but emanating from the wreckage of a face. It was rougher, laced with a faint, wet rattle, but held the same iron authority. Izuku approached, his heart beating a steady, controlled rhythm. He felt no fear. Only a profound sense of awe and loyalty. This was the man who had seen his worth. This was the source of his new purpose. For a year, you have exceeded my every expectation, All for One said. You have honed your body into a serviceable tool and sharpened your mind into a truly magnificent weapon. You have learned my lessons, and in some areas, your insights have even surprised me. You have earned your place. You have earned a reward. All for One slowly raised a hand, its skin scarred and mottled. You have proven you understand that a quirk is merely a tool, not a definition of worth. A lesser man, in your position, would have begged me for power, for some flashy, destructive ability to compensate for his past inadequacies. You have never once asked? That is why you are ready. He beckoned Izuku closer, until he was standing directly before the chair. I am not going to give you the strength of All Might. Brute force is a clumsy instrument, and I already have a sledgehammer in Tamura. I am going to give you a gift that complements what you already are. A key to unlock the final chambers of your potential. This will be unpleasant, but it is a necessary step in your ascension. He placed his hand on Izuku's head. The sensation was indescribable. It was not a physical touch, but an invasive, violating presence. It felt like icy, spectral fingers plunging past his skull, not into his brain, but into his very soul. A torrent of alien energy, cold and ancient, flooded his being. It was a violation of the deepest order. His mind, his sanctuary, was being invaded, he screamed. It was a raw, animal sound he hadn't made since his first week of training. His body convulsed, every nerve ending shrieking in protest. It felt like his synapses were being forcibly unwired and rethreaded with burning wire. He could feel the ghost of another power, 100 powers, 1,000, swirling in the vortex of All for One's quirk, a library of stolen lives. The sheer scale of it was enough to shatter his sanity. Then, a single, specific thread of that power was separated from the maelstrom and brutally shoved into the core of his being. It felt like a shard of jagged ice being hammered into his consciousness. His vision went white, then black, and he collapsed to the floor, his body twitching uncontrollably. He lay there for an eternity, adrift in a sea of white-hot agony. He was dimly aware of All for One's voice, speaking calmly above him. Breathe, my boy. Integrate it. Do not fight it. Command it. It is yours now. Slowly, agonizingly, Izuku forced his splintered consciousness back into focus. He focused on his breathing, a technique Kaido had drilled into him for managing pain. In. Out. In. Out. The fire in his skull began to recede, coalescing from a supernova into a single, intensely bright star at the center of his mind. He opened his eyes, and the world was reborn. It was the same cold, dark room, but he was perceiving it on a level he couldn't have imagined possible. He wasn't just seeing it, he was processing it. He could see the individual dust motes dancing in the faint light, and not just see them, but track their trajectories, predict their paths based on the subtle air currents from the life support machines. He could hear the low hum of the electricity in the walls, and he could discern the specific frequency, calculating the power draw of the entire facility in a microsecond. He could feel the vibrations in the floor from Kurogiri walking in the bar 2 levels above, and he could tell his exact position and direction of travel based on the subtle Doppler shift. His mind, once a single, efficient processor, had become a quantum computer. Thoughts didn't happen linearly anymore. They bloomed. He was simultaneously analyzing the structural integrity of the ceiling, running a psychological profile on all for one based on his breathing patterns, calculating the exact amount of force needed to sever the tubes connected to his chair, and composing a sonnet about the color of decay. It was overwhelming, a tidal wave of data that threatened to drown him. Control it, all for one's voice commanded, a lighthouse in the storm. Focus. Direct the flow. You are the master of your own mind. Izuku squeezed his eyes shut and focused. He pushed aside the extraneous data streams, the dust motes, the power grid, the poetry, and corralled his new cognitive power towards a single point. He opened his eyes and looked at his own hand. He saw the network of scars, the dirt under his fingernails. But he also saw the subtle tremor in his little finger, a residual effect of the nerve damage from a poorly blocked attack 3 months ago. He saw the capillary beds under his skin, the pulsing of his own blood. He could feel the lactic acid buildup in his forearm muscles. The sheer, overwhelming clarity was intoxicating. This quirk, all for one explained, sensing the change, is called cognitive overdrive. It supercharges the brain's processing capabilities, parallel thought, perfect eidetic memory, predictive modeling at speeds no machine can match. It will allow you to run 1,000 battle simulations in the time it takes an enemy to throw a single punch. It is the ultimate tool for a strategist. Izuku slowly pushed himself to his feet. His body was weak and trembling, but his mind was a silent, humming engine of impossible power. The world no longer felt chaotic. It was a complex, beautiful system of variables and equations, and for the first time, he felt he had the capacity to solve it. Thank you? Sensei, Izuku said, his voice raspy. You have earned it, all for one replied. Now, there's one last piece of your transformation. The boy named Izuku Midoriya died on a rooftop a year ago. The asset I have been training needs a name, a designation for the new world. It is time for you to choose who you will be. Izuku stood in the echoing chamber, the hum of his new quirk a constant presence in his mind. He considered names of power, of fear. Names like Overlord, or Dread, or Judgment. They felt childish, theatrical. They were the kind of names Shigaraki would choose. They were names that screamed for attention. He didn't want attention. He wanted control. His power wasn't in a flashy display. It was in the silent, invisible calculations that decided a battle before the first blow was ever struck. He was a specialist, a genius, but a focused, detached one. A mind honed for a singular, monumental purpose. Savant, Izuku said, the word tasting strange and new. My name is Savant. All for one was silent for a moment, and then a low, rattling laugh echoed in the chamber. It was a sound of genuine, paternal pride. Excellent. Precise. Functional. It suits you perfectly. Arise, Savant. Your forging is complete. It is time to test your edge. The test came a week later. It was not on a battlefield, but in the simulated world of a strategy game. The holographic display in the study flickered to life, showing a detailed 3D map of a city district. 2 icons appeared on opposite sides, one blue, one red. A simple exercise, all for one's voice announced to the room. Savant stood on one side of the table. On the other, scratching his neck with agitated energy, was Tamura Shigaraki. The objective is to neutralize the enemy's command unit, a symbolic hero. Shigaraki, you will command the red forces. Savant, you will command the blue. You each have an identical set of resources, foot soldiers, 2 mid-tier Nomu, and 1 high-tier unit. Begin. Shigaraki grinned, a fractured, unsettling expression. He had resented Izuku from the moment he arrived, seeing him as a rival for Sensei's attention. This was his chance to put the quirkless wannabe in his place. This is stupid. A game for kids, Shigaraki rasped, his fingers stabbing at the holographic controls. Let's get this over with. His strategy was brutally simple. He directed all his forces, led by the high-tier Nomu, in a direct, headlong charge toward the blue command unit's starting position. A wave of pure, overwhelming force. Savant stood perfectly still, his eyes half closed. With cognitive overdrive, he wasn't just seeing the map. He was living in it. Initializing simulation. Shigaraki's opening move, Alpha Strike. Probability, 98.7%. Motive, impatience, desire for a quick, decisive victory to assert dominance. Emotional state, arrogant, dismissive, running counters. Scenario 1, direct opposition. Result, blue forces annihilated in 4.3 minutes. Unacceptable loss rate. Scenario 2, full retreat. Result, command unit cornered and destroyed in 7.8 minutes. Tactical failure. Scenario 14, feigned retreat with flanking maneuver. Result, 62% chance of success, but with heavy casualties. Scenario 87, asymmetrical warfare. Exploit Shigaraki's psychological profile. Probability of success, 94.2%. While Shigaraki's red icons swarmed across the center of the map, Savant made his move. It was quiet, almost imperceptible. He moved a single unit of foot soldiers to a power substation on the edge of the map and had them sabotage it. On the holographic display, a section of the city plunged into darkness. What's this? Shigaraki snarled. What are you doing, playing with the lights? A distraction, Savant said calmly, his voice even. Psychological analysis. Shigaraki equates power with destruction. The inability to see the full board will frustrate him. He will divert a portion of his forces to secure the substation, believing it to be a critical objective. As predicted, Shigaraki, annoyed by the dark spot on his map, peeled off one of his mid-tier Nomu and a squad of soldiers to investigate. It was a minor diversion, but it was the first crack in his solid red wall of force. Savant's fingers danced over the controls. He didn't move to attack. Instead, he began manipulating the civilian AI in the simulation. He created a multi-car pileup on a major bridge, blocking the most direct route for Shigaraki's main force. He triggered a fire alarm in a skyscraper, flooding the streets with panicking civilians that would further slow the advance. Stop playing these stupid games! Shigaraki shrieked, his scratching becoming frantic. Fight me! I am fighting you, Savant replied, his eyes never leaving the board. You just haven't realized it yet. Shigaraki's frustration levels rising. His focus is narrowing to the physical confrontation he craves. He is ignoring 80% of the strategic variables on the board. With Shigaraki's forces bogged down and slightly fractured, Savant made his second move. He sent his own 2 mid-tier Nomu on a wide, looping path around the chaos. Not towards Shigaraki's army, but towards the now unprotected rear of the red team's starting zone. At the same time, he took his high-tier Nomu and command unit and hid them in the complex subway system beneath the city, vanishing from the main map entirely. Shigaraki's main force finally broke through the traffic and chaos, arriving at Savant's starting point to find it completely empty. Where did you go? You coward! He screamed, slamming his hand on the console. A king does not meet a peasant on a battlefield of the peasant's choosing, Savant said, his voice flat. A moment later, 2 blue icons appeared behind Shigaraki's command unit and annihilated it. Game over. Blue team wins. The hologram faded, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. Kurogyri, who had been watching silently from the corner, paused in his polishing, his yellow eyes fixed on Savant with a look of newfound, profound respect. Shigaraki trembled, his entire body shaking with a mixture of disbelief and pure, unadulterated rage. He had been so thoroughly, so effortlessly outmaneuvered that he had never even had a chance to fight. He had lost the game without even seeing his opponent's main force. You cheated, he whispered, his voice dangerously low. I used the resources available to me, Savant corrected him coolly. You saw the board as a brawl. I saw it as a system. I didn't defeat your army. I defeated you. With a guttural roar, Shigaraki lunged across the table, his hand outstretched, all 5 fingers aiming for Savant's face. Savant didn't flinch. Time seemed to slow down. Threat analysis. Tamura Shigaraki. Quirk, decay. Contact with 5 fingers results in rapid disintegration. Speed, moderate. Trajectory, linear, predictable. Emotional state, enraged, irrational. Counter option 1, dodge left. Success probability, 99.8%. Counter option 2, block with forearm. Success probability, 85%, risk of partial contact. Counter option 3, incapacitate before contact. Utilize table edge as fulcrum to break wrist. Success probability, 91%. Preferred option, demonstrates superiority without permanent damage to a key league asset. He didn't need to move. A wall of purple mist erupted between them as Kurogyri intervened, his warp gate swallowing Shigaraki's arm up to the elbow. That is enough, Tamura Shigaraki, Kurogyri's disembodied voice warned. He's a cheater. A smug little Tamura. All for one's voice cut through the tension, sharp and cold as a razor. Shigaraki froze, the rage on his face instantly replaced by fear. You lost, Sensei stated simply. You lost because you are a child throwing a tantrum with a loaded gun. Savant won because he is a general who understands that the battle is over long before the first shot is fired. You will learn from this. Or you will be replaced. Is that understood? Shigaraki trembled, yanking his arm back from Kurogyri's portal. He stared at Savant, his red eyes burning with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. It was the hatred of a crumbling monument for the sleek, modern skyscraper being built in its shadow. Without another word, he turned and stormed out of the room. Savant stood in the silence, his expression unreadable. He felt no thrill of victory. No satisfaction. The outcome had been a certainty from the moment the simulation began. It was simply the logical result. He looked down at his hands, the hands that had manipulated a simulated city to its knees. The forging was complete. Izuku Midoriya was a ghost, a collection of memories he could access but no longer feel. In his place stood Savant, the prodigy of the underworld. And his work was just beginning. The mission, when it came, was not delivered with fanfare or a dramatic briefing. It arrived as a simple data file on Savant's encrypted terminal, its title clinical and unassuming, Project Chimera Phase 1. There was no mention of destruction, no call for chaos. The objective was surgical, insidious, and deeply intellectual. It was a mission designed by a strategist for a strategist. It was perfect. The target was the Dauntless Hero Agency, a mid-sized but rapidly growing organization based in the coastal city of Kyoshi, headed by the charismatic pro-hero, Captain Celebrity, a man whose quirk allowed him to generate force fields of varying size and strength. The agency had cultivated a flawless public image. They were the darlings of the media, their approval ratings second only to the largest national agencies. They specialized in high-profile rescues and had a team of young, attractive, and highly marketable sidekicks. To the public, they were the shining ideal of modern heroism. To Savant, they were a house of cards waiting for a steady, deliberate hand to pull out the one at the bottom. He spent the first 72 hours in his sterile white room, which he now considered his sanctuary. He didn't eat or sleep. The low, constant hum of cognitive overdrive was a far more potent fuel than caffeine or rest. The holographic display around him was no longer a single screen, but a dazzling, three-dimensional web of interconnected data points. Financial records, social media accounts, encrypted police reports, architectural blueprints, and hours of body cam footage from dauntless heroes flickered and danced in the air around him. He was not looking for a single, glaring weakness. He was mapping the entire system, searching for the subtle stress fractures, the hidden hypocrisies, the quiet compromises that held the pristine facade in place. Captain Celebrity, whose real name was Christopher Skyline, was an American hero who had moved to Japan for the more robust hero market. Savant's analysis painted a clear picture. The man was not a true hero, he was a brand. His rescues were often flashy but inefficient. He prioritized camera angles over civilian safety, often prolonging a situation to ensure maximum media coverage. He had a history of minor property damage lawsuits, all settled quickly and quietly by the agency's aggressive legal team. He was arrogant, image-obsessed, and his primary motivation was fame. He was the hollow core. The sidekicks were the supporting pillars, each with their own flaws. Flare-up, Mokamiji, a pyrokinetic with a bubbly public persona and a gambling addiction. Savant found encrypted transaction logs from several illegal online casinos, all traced back to a shell account funded by her salary. Taido Rush, Kaido Tsurabari, an aquatic hero with a hydrokinetic quirk. He was having an affair with a prominent city councilwoman, a woman who happened to sit on the zoning committee that had approved the agency's controversial new waterfront headquarters. Datastream, Hikari Ito, a technopath who managed the agency's communications and security. She was a white-hat hacker who had been caught by the Hero Public Safety Commission and given a choice, prison or service. Her loyalty was not to the agency, but to her own survival. Savant saw it all. The greed, the lust, the desperation. This wasn't a team of heroes. It was a collection of self-interested individuals bound together by a mutually beneficial lie. It was a microcosm of the very societal rot All for One had described. And it was beautifully, exquisitely fragile. His plan formed not as a linear sequence, but as a bloom of possibilities that he pruned and refined with ruthless efficiency. Brute force was out of the question. A direct attack would only martyr them and validate their existence. A known attack would be messy and traceable. No, the dauntless agency would not be destroyed by a villain's hand. It would be compelled to destroy itself. The operation requires a handler, Savant stated, speaking to the intercom in his room. He had not requested a meeting with All for One. He simply stated his needs. It was the new dynamic between them. I require transport and a remote comms link. Kurogyri will suffice. There was a pause, and then the familiar, calm voice of his sensei replied. A wise choice. He is discreet and reliable. He will be at your disposal. You will operate from a mobile command unit. No direct contact with any targets. You are to be a ghost in their machine. Understood, Savant said, and the connection terminated. 2 days later, Savant was sitting in the back of a nondescript black van parked on a quiet, unremarkable street in Kyoshi. The interior was a stark contrast to the mundane exterior. A bank of monitors displayed satellite imagery, network traffic, and biometric data feeds. The air hummed with the quiet power of top-of-the-line servers. Savant, dressed in simple black fatigues and a light tactical vest, sat before the main console, his fingers a blur across the keyboard. In the driver's seat, Kurogyri sat impassively, a dark silhouette in his bartender's attire. He did not speak unless spoken to. He was a tool, a function, and Savant appreciated his silent efficiency. Phase 1 is initiated, Savant said, his voice as quiet as the hum of the electronics. Begin with flare-up. He typed a final command. Miles away, in the penthouse apartment of Mokamiji, a notification pinged on her personal laptop. It was an email from an anonymous, encrypted source. It contained no text, only a single, attached file, a meticulously detailed ledger of all her online gambling debts, including dates, times, amounts, and the IP addresses of the illegal sites she had frequented. Savant watched her biometric data on his screen. A small, almost invisible sensor he'd had a low-level villain plant on her favorite jacket was feeding him a constant stream. Her heart rate, which had been a steady 72 BPM, spiked to 135. Her respiration quickened. Adrenaline flooded her system. Panic. A second email arrived a minute later. Subject, an investment opportunity. Your extracurricular activities are a liability, flare up. My associates and I believe in proactive risk management. You have two options. Option A. This ledger is forwarded to the Hero Public Safety Commission and every major news outlet in Japan. Your career ends. You face criminal charges. Option B. you are given a chance to clear your debt and secure your future. A small act of corporate espionage is required. A data file from your agency's secure server. Details to follow upon your cooperation. You have 1 hour to decide. Choose wisely. Savant watched her data stream. It was a symphony of fear. He saw the frantic spike in her cortisol levels, the tremor in her hands represented by the micro-vibrations from the sensor. He ran a predictive model. 99.4% probability of compliance. Subject's primary motivation is self-preservation and the maintenance of her public lifestyle. The threat of exposure outweighs any loyalty to the agency. 47 minutes later, a reply came. A single word. Fine. She's in, Savant said to the empty van. Kurogyri gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Next was Tidal Rush. His approach had to be different. Blackmailing a man over an affair was crude and unpredictable. It could lead to a messy confession or a defiant stand. Savant's goal was not chaos. It was controlled demolition. Instead of targeting the hero, he targeted the city councilwoman, Emi Sato. He initiated a multi-pronged digital assault. He created a dozen highly realistic bot accounts on a popular social media platform, all posing as residents of Kyoshi. Over the course of a week, these bots began a grassroots campaign, raising concerns about the environmental impact of the new Dauntless headquarters. They posted fabricated articles from non-existent environmental groups, complete with doctored photos of sick sea life and eroding shorelines. Simultaneously, he used a different set of anonymous emails to leak Tidal Rush's affair to two specific people, Emi Sato's husband, a powerful and notoriously jealous shipping magnate, and a hungry young journalist at a rival news network known for her ruthless ambition. He didn't provide proof, only a hint. A seed of suspicion. The effect was exactly as his models predicted. The husband, enraged and paranoid, hired a private investigator. The journalist, smelling a career-making scandal, began her own digging. The public, swayed by the bot campaign, began to pressure the city council. Emi Sato was suddenly besieged from three sides: a brewing public relations nightmare, a suspicious journalist, and a volatile husband. Her affair with Tidal Rush, once a thrilling dalliance, was now a ticking time bomb threatening to obliterate her political career and her marriage. She did the only logical thing. She distanced herself. She began publicly questioning the zoning decision she had once championed. She stopped returning Tidal Rush's calls. On Savant's screen, he monitored the hero's outgoing messages. A series of increasingly desperate, angry texts to the councilwoman, all unanswered. His patrol performance became sloppy. He was distracted, irritable. The pillar was cracking. While these two threads unspooled, Savant spent a day on a different kind of mission. He left the van, disguised in a simple baseball cap and hoodie, and walked through the streets of Kyoshi. He needed to see the system from the ground. He stood in a crowd, watching the Dauntless Agency's giant public view screen. Captain Celebrity was giving an interview, his smile wide and painfully white, his words a meaningless cascade of heroic platitudes. The people around Izuku were eating it up, their faces full of adoration. He felt nothing. No anger, no resentment. It was like a biologist observing a colony of ants. They were simple creatures, responding to simple stimuli. They worshipped the image, blind to the rotten reality beneath. His walk took him to a quieter part of the city, a district of narrow alleys and rundown apartment buildings. It was here that he had his first, unplanned encounter. He saw a group of older kids, teenagers, cornering a younger boy with a weak mutation quirk. His fingers could glow faintly, like cheap glow sticks. They were shoving him, calling him Lantern Hands, trying to steal his backpack. A year ago, Izuku Midoriya would have charged in without a second thought. He would have thrown himself in the way, gotten beaten to a pulp, and felt righteous in his foolishness. Savant stood in the shadows of the alley, his heart beating a slow, steady rhythm. He analyzed the scene. 3 assailants, 1 victim. The victim was crying, terrified. The assailants were enjoying his fear. It was a microcosm of his own childhood with Bakugo. He felt a flicker of something. An echo. A ghost of an emotion from a past life. It was a dissonant chord in the clean, logical symphony of his mind. Save him, the ghost whispered. That's what a hero would do. A hero is not what I am, Savant's own voice replied, cold and absolute. Intervention is inefficient. It solves one immediate problem while leaving the systemic cause untouched. But then, another thought, a colder, more strategic one, surfaced. An uncontrolled variable is a liability. This incident could attract a passing hero patrol. That would be an unwelcome complication to my operation. He reached into his pocket. His fingers closed around a small, smooth stone. He had no intention of fighting. With cognitive overdrive, the world was a series of levers he could pull from a distance. He calculated the trajectory, the wind speed, the reflective index of a nearby window. He flicked the stone. It arced through the air, struck the metal frame of a third-story window with a sharp crack, ricocheted down to strike a precariously balanced terracotta pot on a balcony below, and sent the pot crashing to the pavement just behind the bullies. It shattered with a sound like a gunshot. The teenagers yelped in alarm, spinning around. The younger boy, seeing his chance, scrambled away, vanishing down the alley. The bullies, unnerved and their fun spoiled, cursed and stomped off in the other direction. The street was empty again. The incident was over. No one was hurt. No heroes were called. The variable had been controlled. Savant stood in the shadows, his hands still in his pocket. He had saved the boy. But it wasn't an act of heroism. It was an act of pest control. He felt no satisfaction, only the quiet hum of a problem efficiently solved. He turned and walked back to the van, the ghost of his Ukamitariya growing fainter with every step. He pushed the memory of the crying boy's face from his mind. It was irrelevant data. Back in the command unit, it was time for the final piece. Data stream, the reluctant technopath. He didn't need to blackmail or manipulate her. He just needed to offer her a better deal. He opened a secure, anonymous chat channel, one he knew she would be monitoring. Greetings, White Rabbit. He used her old hacker alias. The response was immediate, a string of code attempting to trace his location. Savant laughed quietly as his own counter-programs effortlessly deflected and scrubbed the trace. Don't bother. You can't find me. Who is this? Her reply came, stripped of its usual bravado. A prospective employer. I've reviewed your work. Your talents are wasted on glorified IT support and deleting Captain Celebrity's embarrassing search history. I'm offering you a position where your skills will be truly valued and compensated accordingly. He transferred a single Bitcoin to an old, dormant account of hers. It was a token amount, but it was a clear demonstration of his reach. What do you want? She typed. Your employers are compromised. The Dauntless Agency is a sinking ship. I'm offering you a lifeboat. When the time comes, you will be given a choice. Help them, and go down with the ship. Or help me, and I will provide you with a new identity, a clean slate, and unlimited resources. Think of it as a better form of witness protection. He logged off. The hook was set. Her loyalty was already non-existent. He had simply given it a price. Now, all the pieces were in place. It was time to push the first domino. He sent a new message to Flare Up. It was a simple instruction. On her next shift, she was to use her clearance to access the agency's main server room and download a specific, encrypted file containing their long-term financial projections. She was to upload it to a secure Dropbox. In return, a third of her gambling debt would be erased. The night of the operation, Savant monitored everything. He watched Flare-Up's nervous biometric data. He tracked her movement through the agency on the building's blueprints. He had a backdoor into the security camera feed, courtesy of a silent, cooperative data stream. He watched as Flare-Up, clumsy with fear, managed to download the file. The moment it hit his server, Savant acted. He didn't leak the file. That would be too simple. Instead, he subtly corrupted it. He altered the financial data, inflating projected profits and fabricating several lucrative, non-existent international contracts. He then leaked this doctored file not to the press, but to Captain Celebrity's personal email, framing it as a leak from a rival agency. The bait was perfect. Christopher Skyline, arrogant and greedy, saw the doctored numbers and believed them. He saw a chance to take his company public, to make himself fabulously wealthy. He immediately called a meeting with his primary corporate sponsor, a powerful tech conglomerate. The fool is taking the bait, Savant murmured. Kurogyri, a silent shadow, remained motionless. While Captain Celebrity was busy planning his imagined fortune, Savant pushed the next domino. He sent the real, undoctored financial records, along with the proof of Tidal Rush's affair and the details of Flare-Up's gambling debts, to the ambitious young journalist he had primed earlier. He packaged it perfectly, an explosive, ready-made story of corruption, fraud, and moral bankruptcy. The fallout was apocalyptic. And it was beautiful. The story broke on a Tuesday morning. The headline was devastating: House of Dauntless, Corruption, Debt, and Deceit in Japan's shining agency. The public, who had just last week adored Captain Celebrity, turned on him with feral speed. The grassroots environmental campaign against the new headquarters suddenly looked like a legitimate protest against a corrupt organization. The story of the affair destroyed not only Tidal Rush's career, but Councilwoman Sato's as well. Her husband filed for a messy, public divorce. Flare-Up was suspended indefinitely. Her gambling addiction laid bare for the world to see. Captain Celebrity, trapped in a meeting with his sponsors about the fraudulent numbers he himself had presented, was blindsided. His sponsors, seeing the scandal and realizing they had been shown fabricated data, immediately pulled all funding. They announced a lawsuit for fraud. The Dauntless Hero Agency imploded in less than 24 hours. Savant watched it all unfold from the quiet darkness of the van. He watched the press conferences where a haggard-looking Captain Celebrity tried and failed to defend himself. He watched the news reports, the angry social media comments, the agency's stock price, what little of it there was, plummeting into oblivion. There had been no explosions, no epic battles, no villainous monologues on a jumbotron. Just a series of quiet, precise, calculated moves. He had used their own greed, their own lust, their own fear against them. He hadn't destroyed the agency. He had simply revealed the truth, and it had crumbled to dust under the weight of its own corruption. In the midst of the chaos, he received one final message from Data Stream. The ship is sunk. Where's my lifeboat? Savant instructed Kurogyri to open a small warp gate in an alleyway near the agency. Through it, he passed a briefcase containing a new passport, a plane ticket to an untraceable life in South America, and a hard drive containing enough cryptocurrency to last a lifetime. Another asset acquired, another loose end tied. On the main monitor, a news helicopter circled the now desolate Dauntless headquarters. Savant focused on the image. He saw a young boy, no older than 10, standing on the street below, looking up at the building. The boy was wearing a Captain Celebrity t-shirt, and he was crying. His idol had been torn down, his hero revealed as a fraud. For a single, fleeting moment, Savant felt the ghost again. The echo of Izuku Midoriya, the boy who had his own world shattered on a rooftop. He felt a pang of something. Pity? Empathy? He zoomed in on the boy's face. He saw the tears, the look of utter betrayal. And then, the cold, clear logic of cognitive overdrive washed the feeling away, replacing it with a chilling new thought. This is necessary. The thought came, sharp and absolute. His faith was misplaced. He was worshipping a lie. Today, he has been disillusioned. He has been hurt. But he has also been liberated from a fiction. I am not destroying his dream. I am cauterizing a wound. I am saving him from a lifetime of false hope. He reframed the image. The boy wasn't a victim. He was a success metric. He was one of 1 million, 10 million, 1 billion people whose blind faith in the corrupt hero system needed to be systematically, ruthlessly dismantled. This boy's tears were not a tragedy. They were the first drops of rain in the coming storm. The mission is complete, Savant said, his voice devoid of any emotion. He leaned back in his chair, the glow of the monitors reflecting in his cold, green eyes. A complete success. Kurogyri started the engine. Where to, Savant-sama? He asked, the honorific new, unbidden, but earned. Savant looked at the screen one last time, at the smoking ruins of a hero's reputation. Home, he said. It's time to choose the next target. The successful demolition of the Dauntless Agency did not earn Savant praise from Shigaraki. It earned him something far more potent, a simmering, venomous silence. Shigaraki had watched the news reports with a twitching, agitated energy, his fingers scratching furiously at his neck. He couldn't deny the result, but he despised the method. It was clean, intellectual, and utterly devoid of the visceral, destructive satisfaction he craved. Savant's victory was a quiet game of chess, while Shigaraki longed for the chaotic thrill of flipping the board. All for One, however, was immensely pleased. His disembodied voice, emanating from the speakers in Savant's study, was laced with a satisfaction that was almost paternal. A flawless debut, my boy. You did not simply tear down a building, you demolished a symbol. You weaponized the public's trust and turned it against itself. You have proven you understand the true nature of this war. It will not be won with fists, but with ideas. It was a preliminary test, Savant replied, his eyes fixed on the holographic display where a new project file was already taking shape. A proof of concept. To dismantle the entire system, we need more than just a scalpel. We need leverage. We need agents of chaos. We need symbols of our own. Precisely, All for One agreed. Tamura is a symbol of destruction, a raw primal force. But he is a blunt instrument. The League, in its current state, is a collection of hired thugs and loyal retainers. It lacks ideological diversity. It lacks star power. I am entrusting you with its expansion. You will be the architect of our new vanguard. Find me the broken pieces of this society, the ones who have been discarded by the heroes, and show them how they can be reforged into weapons. The task was clear. Shigaraki was the figurehead, the final boss in the game he so loved to talk about. Savant would be the one who designed the levels, programmed the enemies, and wrote the code. His new project folder was titled Vanguard Action Squad, Recruitment Protocol. He didn't begin by searching criminal databases or underworld contacts. That was Jiren's job, and it yielded only mercenaries and thugs. Savant began where he always did, with data. He cast a wide, sweeping net across Japan's digital landscape, his cognitive overdrive sifting through terabytes of information. He was looking for patterns, for outliers, for screams of dissent in the digital void. He searched for police reports on incidents involving bizarre quirk usage, for radical manifestos on fringe forums, for social media accounts that radiated pure, undiluted animosity towards hero society. He was not just looking for villains. He was looking for stories. He was looking for people who were not just evil, but who had been made. The first name to solidify from the data cloud was one that was already notorious: Kaizo Makaguro. The hero killer, Stain. Savant immersed himself in everything he could find about the man. He watched every grainy video of his attacks, read every police report, every psychological profile, every news editorial. He ignored the media's portrayal of him as a mindless, bloodthirsty monster. That was hero propaganda, designed to simplify a complex threat into a digestible comic book villain. Savant looked deeper, analyzing the ideology. He's a Puritan, Savant murmured, pacing before the hologram of Stain's twisted, furious face. A zealot. His core thesis is that modern heroism is a sham, a profession corrupted by fame and wealth. He believes most pro-heroes are fakes who must be culled to allow true heroes to emerge. He isn't an anarchist. He's a reformer, albeit a homicidally insane one. All for One's voice filled the room. And do you believe you can recruit a man with such a rigid, uncompromising ideology? He would likely see us as the epitome of what he despises. Direct recruitment is impossible, Savant stated, his mind already running a dozen scenarios. His ego and his ideology would never allow him to submit to a larger organization. He is a lone wolf. He will hunt, he will be cornered, and he will be captured. The HPSC and the police are already closing in on him. His operational security is atrocious. His capture is a statistical certainty within the next 3 months. Then he is of no use to us, Sensei concluded. No, Savant countered, a flicker of excitement in his usually placid demeanor. He is of more use to us as a martyr than as a soldier. A living Stain is a minor nuisance, a serial killer the heroes can defeat to boost their approval ratings. A captured Stain, whose message is carefully curated and amplified by us, can become a messiah. His ideology, stripped of his personal insanity, is a powerful recruitment tool. It speaks to the disillusioned, the cynical, the ones who see the hypocrisy but lack the vocabulary to articulate it. Savant's fingers flew across his console. He began to write. He didn't compose a battle plan. He composed a manifesto. He took Stain's raw, rambling diatribes and refined them, sharpening the arguments, polishing the rhetoric. He stripped away the talk of true heroes and focused entirely on the condemnation of the fakes. He wove in themes of corporate corruption, of heroes as celebrities rather than saviors, using the data from the dauntless agency collapse as a prime example. He was crafting the gospel according to Saint Stain. We won't recruit the man, Savant explained, uploading the finished document to a secure server. We will hijack his legacy. After he is captured, we will leak this manifesto. We will spread his videos. We will turn him from a villain into a revolutionary figure. We won't get Stain, but we will get the Stain-inspired. We will get the disenfranchised youth who hear his words and see a truth the world has tried to hide from them. We will get an army of acolytes. All for One was silent for a long moment. Brilliant. Utterly ruthless, and brilliant. You see the world not as it is, but as a series of levers to be pulled. Very well. The hero killer is your project. Who is next? Savant pulled up 2 new files. The data on these individuals was far scarcer, buried in sealed juvenile records and whispered underworld rumors. They were not yet symbols, merely dangerous anomalies. The first was a girl. The filed photo was a middle school picture of a smiling, blonde-haired girl with wide, happy eyes. The picture was cross-referenced with a series of bloody crime scenes, reports of victims being drained of blood. The name on the juvenile record was sealed, but the underworld chatter gave her a moniker, Himiko Toga. Savant dug deeper, bypassing HPSC encryption with a series of elegant, custom-written algorithms. He found the incident report. A middle school classmate found stabbed with a drinking straw, the girl standing over him, her face flushed in what witnesses described as ecstatic bliss. Her quirk was listed as transform, allowing her to take on the appearance of another by ingesting their blood. The official psychological profile labels her as a psychopath with a severe hemotomania fetish, Savant said. It's lazy. Incomplete. He pulled up her social media history, her school records, her family interviews. A pattern emerged. Toga was a child who had been relentlessly, suffocatingly pressured to be normal. Her parents, horrified by her quirk's nature and her fascination with blood, had forced her into therapy and behavioral conditioning. They had tried to fix her, to make her suppress her fundamental nature. The smiling girl in the photos was a mask, one that had finally, violently cracked. She doesn't kill out of malice, Savant analyzed. Her worldview is built on a twisted concept of love and admiration. To her, to become someone is the ultimate expression of affection. To ingest their blood, to wear their face, it's a form of worship. Society told her this desire was monstrous, so she became a monster. She isn't just a killer, she's a victim of society's desperate need for conformity. A compelling narrative, Sensei's voice mused. But is she controllable? Control is the wrong word, Savant replied. She cannot be controlled, but she can be directed. She doesn't need a leash, she needs a sanctuary. She needs a place where she is told that her nature isn't monstrous, but beautiful. Where her desires aren't a sickness to be cured, but a talent to be celebrated. If we offer her acceptance and the freedom to be her truest self, she will offer us absolute, terrifying loyalty. The second file was even more of a ghost. There was no official record, no name, no known quirk. Just a string of unsolved arson cases across several prefectures. The fires were unique. They burned with an unnatural, searing blue heat that could melt steel. The targets were always the same: low-level hero agencies, hero support companies, and occasionally, the homes of C-list heroes. The perpetrator left no evidence, no witnesses, only scorched earth and a whisper of a name, Dobby. He's a ghost, Savant said, staring at a blurry security camera still of a tall, lanky figure in a dark coat, flames licking from his fingertips. The image was too distorted to make out any features. His attacks are precise, vindictive, and targeted. This isn't random arson, it's a crusade. His choice of targets and the unique nature of his flames suggest a deep, personal hatred for the hero system itself, and possibly a specific hero. Savant cross-referenced the locations of the attacks with the patrol routes and agency headquarters of Japan's top 10 heroes. He ran analyses on the composition of the blue flames based on forensic reports, comparing them to the thermal output of every known fire-based quirk in the national database. One name kept coming up, an outlier in the data, a statistical ghost. Endeavor. The locations of Dabi's attacks often coincided with places Endeavor had recently had a public success. The blue flames, while unique, shared certain thermal properties with Endeavor's own hell flame, only burning at a significantly higher temperature. It was a hypothesis, a ghost of a connection, but Savant's analytical sense latched onto it. A vendetta against the number 2 hero? All for one sounded intrigued. That would be a powerful tool indeed. His motivation is pure, uncut hatred, Savant confirmed. He doesn't want money. He doesn't want fame. He wants to watch the world of heroes, and Endeavor in particular, burn to the ground. He's been working alone because he trusts no one. He believes he is on a solitary mission. To recruit him, we cannot offer him a place as a subordinate. We must offer him a platform. We must convince him that the League of Villains is not an army he is joining, but the most effective weapon he can wield to achieve his own goals. The strategy was set. For Toga, acceptance. For Dabi, opportunity. For Stain's legacy, appropriation. Now came the most dangerous part, the approach. All for one forbade Savant from making direct contact himself. He was too valuable an asset to risk. Instead, he would use Jiren as his proxy, his voice, his hand in the physical world. Savant would orchestrate everything from the safety of his command center. He found Toga first. She was squatting in an abandoned tenement, her trail marked by a series of petty crimes and exsanguinated stray animals. Jiren, dressed in his usual sharp suit, approached the building not as a threat, but as a visitor. He brought a gift, a high-end medical cooler containing 3 liters of fresh, hospital-grade A-negative blood. Savant watched through a micro-drone hovering silently outside the window. He saw Toga, her hair in messy buns, her eyes wide and feral, holding a bloody knife. She looked less like a girl and more like a cornered animal. He fed Jiren his lines through a subcutaneous comms unit. Himiko Toga, Jiren said, his voice calm and pleasant. He placed the cooler on the floor and kicked it gently towards her. A gift. From an admirer. Toga stared at the cooler, then back at Jiren, her head tilted. Who are you? I represent a group, Savant had Jiren say. A family of sorts. We believe that the world is too gray, too boring, too normal. We believe that people should be free to live as they truly are. We've seen your art. The way you express your love. And we think it's beautiful. Savant watched Toga's biometrics through a long-range scanner. Her heart rate, which had been skyrocketing with adrenaline, suddenly steadied. Her posture relaxed infinitesimally. The word beautiful had landed like a depth charge. You're not a hero? She asked, her voice a strange mix of childish curiosity and predatory suspicion. Heroes put people like you in cages, Jiren replied, the words flowing smoothly from Savant's mind. They tell you that what you feel is wrong. We don't have cages. We have a stage. We have a place where you'll never have to hide again. A place where you'll be loved for who you are, not for the mask you wear. And we have so many fascinating people we want you to meet. Toga's eyes lit up, a dangerous, ecstatic gleam appearing within them. She looked at the blood, then at Jiren, and a wide, unsettling smile spread across her face, revealing elongated canines. She didn't say yes. She just giggled, a sound like broken wind chimes, and opened the cooler. Asset 1 was secured. Finding Dabi was harder. He was a nomad, a phantom. Savant finally tracked him down not through his crimes, but through his needs. Even a ghost needed supplies. He traced a series of black market purchases for high-grade skin grafts and burn salve to a back-alley clinic in a forgotten part of the city. His body was clearly paying a high price for his powerful quirk. Again, Jiren was the emissary. He found Dabi in a grimy alleyway, leaning against a wall, his body held together with surgical staples and sheer force of will. The smell of antiseptic and scorched flesh hung in the air around him. Dabi, Jiren said, keeping a respectful distance. My employer has been following your work. He's impressed. Your artistry has a very specific signature. Dalby didn't look at him. He just stared at the opposite wall, his turquoise eyes burning with a cold blue fire. I'm not for hire. This isn't a job offer, Savant instructed Jiren. It's a business proposal. You have a goal. A very specific, very ambitious goal. You want to tear down the pillars of hero society. You want to expose the hypocrisy of the number 2 hero, Endeavor, and watch him fall. Am I wrong? Dalby finally turned his head. His scarred, patchwork face was a mask of suspicion. Who's your employer? He is a man who shares your ambitions, but on a grander scale. You're using a blowtorch to attack a fortress. He's offering you control of the wrecking ball. The League of Villains is about to launch a campaign, a systematic war against hero society. We have resources. We have a plan. But we lack a singular, powerful message of righteous fury. We lack your fire. Dalby scoffed, a dry, rasping sound. The League of Villains? That's the group with the hand fetish manchild, right? They attacked a high school? I'm not interested in petty vandalism. This was the critical moment. Savant had predicted this dismissal. The attack on Yui was an announcement, Jiren said, his voice firm. A test. The League is under new management. A new strategist. One who believes in results, not tantrums. One who has a plan to bring Endeavor and everything he stands for to ruin. But he can't do it without you. Your crusade, your personal vendetta, is the key. We will give you the stage, the resources, the backup. All we ask is that when Endeavor burns, he burns under our banner. Savant had Jiren slide a burner phone across the pavement. Think about it. When you're tired of fighting a war all by yourself, make the call. We'll be waiting. Jiren turned and walked away without looking back. Dalby watched him go, his expression unreadable. He didn't pick up the phone immediately. He waited until Jiren was gone, then slowly bent down, his patched-together body moving stiffly, and retrieved it. Asset 2 was pending. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place 2 weeks later. The news exploded with reports from Hosa City. The hero killer, Stain, had been defeated and captured, but not before crippling several pro-heroes, including the brother of Ingenium. The heroes who stopped him were Endeavor and, according to the official report, several of his interns. Savant watched the press conference, a small, cold smile on his face. Everything was proceeding exactly as his models had predicted. Now, he whispered in the darkness of his room, he initiated the final phase of his plan. He uploaded the Stain manifesto he had written to 100 different fringe forums and dark web message boards simultaneously. Then, he used a network of bot accounts to leak a grainy, edited cell phone video of Stain's final moments before capture. He had purchased the footage from a civilian who had filmed it from a nearby apartment building. He had carefully edited it. He cut out the parts showing Stain's frantic, insane rambling. He kept only the moments of ideological clarity. He kept the raw, furious condemnation of the fakes. The word hero has lost all meaning in this society. It's all about money and glory. I will purge this world of the fakes, for the sake of a true hero society. The effect was instantaneous and explosive. The video went viral. The manifesto spread like wildfire. The media and the heroes tried to paint Stain as a simple monster, but the narrative was no longer theirs to control. To a growing, disaffected portion of the populace, Stain wasn't a villain. He was a prophet. Savant monitored the online chatter, his quirk processing millions of data points a second. He saw the birth of a movement. Kids started sharing Stain's image. His ideology became a touchstone for those who felt let down by the system. Small-time villains and petty criminals, previously motivated only by greed, suddenly had a flag to rally under. They weren't just crooks anymore. They were crusaders in Stain's holy war. 2 days after the Hosu incident, the burner phone he had given Dalby rang. Savant answered it himself, using a voice modulator. I'm in. Dalby's voice rasped from the other end. If you're serious about burning it all down, I'm in. At the same time, Toga arrived at the League's bar, brought in by Kurogyri. She was practically bouncing with excitement, a manic, joyful energy radiating from her. Shigaraki, who had been sulking at the bar, looked at her with disgust. So this is the new recruit? He grumbled. She looks crazy, Toga just beamed at him. I'm Himiko Toga. I want a world that's easier to live in. And I want to meet Mr. Staney. Dalby arrived an hour later, a looming, spectral presence who surveyed the dingy bar and its occupants with unconcealed disdain. So this is the Great League of Villains, he drawled. Not much to look at. Shigaraki stood up, his hand twitching. You got a problem with it, Patchwork? Savant chose that moment to make his entrance. He descended the stairs from his study, his footsteps silent. He wore his simple black fatigues, his expression as calm and neutral as a placid lake. Toga looked at him with wide, curious eyes. Dalby's turquoise gaze narrowed, sizing him up. Shigaraki shot him a look of pure loathing. Savant ignored them all and addressed the room as a whole. His voice was not loud, but it cut through the tension with effortless authority. Welcome to the Vanguard, he said. Each of you is here because you represent a fundamental truth about the society that rejected you. Toga, you are the truth that conformity is a cage that breeds monsters. Dalby, you are the truth that the brightest lights cast the darkest shadows. The followers of Stain who will soon flock to us are the truth that faith in heroes is a fragile, hollow thing. He looked from Dalby's burning hatred to Toga's ecstatic smile, to Shigaraki's simmering resentment. They were not a team. They were a collection of broken, jagged, and lethally sharp pieces. They were psychopaths, zealots, and petulant destroyers. It would be a nightmare to manage them, and they were exactly what he needed. Tamura Shigaraki is our leader, the symbol of our destructive will, Savant stated, giving Shigaraki a slight, formal nod that was more of a strategic appeasement than a sign of respect. I am Savant, the architect of our victory. You are not here to be soldiers. You are here to be catalysts. You will help me burn the rot out of this world, so that we can build something new in its place. He turned to the holographic map of Japan that shimmered into existence in the center of the room. A dozen new targets were already marked. Our work begins now. The air inside the mobile command unit was cold, sterile, and smelled faintly of ozone. It was a hermetically sealed world of silent, humming servers and the cool, blue-white glow of a dozen monitors. Izuku, Savant, sat in a high-backed command chair at the center of this technological cocoon, a still point in the coming storm. He wore a simple black headset, and his green eyes, reflecting the cascading data streams on the screens before him, were calm and focused. He called this place the Nest. It was his laboratory, his podium, and his sanctuary. On the main screen, a multi-layered holographic map of the unforeseen simulation joint facility shimmered. It was a marvel of data aggregation, architectural blueprints overlaid with live thermal imaging, network schematics, and predicted structural weak points. To his left, a bank of monitors displayed biometric readouts for every key asset in the field. To his right, a drone-linked camera feed was primed and ready. This was not a raid. It was not a battle. It was an experiment. A grand, violent, and meticulously designed data-gathering exercise. The door to the Nest hissed open, and Tamura Shigaraki slouched in, scratching at his neck with a dry, rasping sound that set Savant's teeth on edge. He was dressed in his villain costume, the disembodied hands clinging to him like macabre trophies. He stared at the screens with a manic, impatient energy. Is it time yet? He rasped, his red eyes fixated on the image of the UA school bus pulling up to the USJ entrance. I'm getting tired of waiting. This plan of yours has too many boring parts. The boring parts are what separate a successful operation from a massacre of our own forces, Savant replied without turning. His voice was a calm, level monotone through the calm system that linked them. The students are arriving. The target, All Might, is scheduled to be with them. Everything is proceeding as predicted. Good, Shigaraki said, a fractured grin spreading across his face. Time to start the game. I can't wait to see the look on All Might's face when my final boss deletes him. Savant turned his chair slightly to face him. Let me be clear one final time, Tamura. Your final boss, Noma Alpha, is the primary subject of this experiment. Its objective is to engage a top-tier pro hero and generate combat data. Your objective is to manage the ground team and apply pressure. Kurogiri's objective is to control the field and ensure extraction. My objective is to gather the data and determine the mission's success parameters. He paused, letting his words sink in. Killing All Might is a tertiary, low-probability objective. A bonus round, if you will. Do not sacrifice primary assets in pursuit of it. Our goal today is not to win the game. It is to learn the rules. Shigaraki sneered, the skin around his eyes tightening. You talk like one of Sensei's textbooks. Just tell me when I can start breaking things. Savant turned back to his console. He watched as the students of Class 1A, his former potential classmates, filed into the giant dome of the USJ. He saw the Space Hero, 13, beginning their speech. The timetable was precise. Kurogyri, Savant spoke into his headset, his voice now stripped of all inflection, becoming purely functional. Phase 1 is a go. Initiate infiltration at the Central Plaza. Acknowledged, Kurogyri's smooth voice replied in his ear. On the main screen, a swirling vortex of purple-black energy bloomed in the heart of the facility. It was a silent, beautiful tear in reality. From it, the flood began. Dozens of low-level thugs, mercenaries Jiren had hired for the occasion, poured out like ants from a disturbed hill. And then came Shigaraki, stepping out into the light with a theatrical languor. Finally, the centerpiece of the operation emerged. Noma Alpha was a grotesque masterpiece of bioengineering. A hulking, bird-beak creature with its brain exposed, its muscles bulging unnaturally. Savant's biometric monitor for the creature flared to life, displaying its heart rate, adrenaline output, and cellular regeneration rate. It was a living weapon, and Savant was its chief engineer. Let the experiment begin, he murmured. His fingers danced across a keyboard, launching a half-dozen micro-drones from the roof of the nest. They were silent, dragonfly-sized machines that entered the USJ through pre-planned ventilation shafts. The screen to his right split into a mosaic of different angles. He had eyes everywhere. He watched, detached, as the initial chaos unfolded. He saw the moment of shock on the heroes' faces, the dawning horror. He saw Aizawa, Eraserhead, leap into battle without hesitation, his capture weapon a flowing ribbon of black in the chaos. Asset Eraserhead has engaged, Savant announced to himself. Performance exceeding initial projections. Note, his quirk erasure is a significant tactical threat, but his combat style is vulnerable to opponents with non-quirk-based enhancements, or overwhelming numbers. He directed 2 drones to focus exclusively on Aizawa, capturing every movement, every micro-expression. The data was invaluable. This was a man who fought quirk users for a living. Understanding his methods was critical for the League's long-term survival. While Shigaraki was monologuing in the plaza, Savant focused on the students. Kurogyri, following Savant's pre-programmed dispersal protocol, used his warp gate to scatter them across the facility's various simulated disaster zones. Dispersal protocol successful, Savant noted. Begin individual threat assessment of student assets. He directed his drones, one by one, to find the scattered groups. He felt a strange, cold curiosity. These were the children who had been chosen, the ones with the right quirks, the ones who had been deemed worthy of standing where he had been told he could not. Now, he would dissect their potential from the safety of his throne. One drone found a group in the shipwreck zone. He saw a small, purple-haired boy panicking in the water, a girl with long, green hair, and a ghost. Tsuyu Adri. He remembered her from his notebooks, her versatile frog quirk. He watched her cool-headed assessment of the situation, her efficient use of her abilities to help the panicked Mineta. Subject, Tsuyu Adri. Quirk, frog. Assessment, high situational awareness, low panic response. Versatile quirk with applications in mobility, reconnaissance, and combat. Threat level, low-medium. Potential for growth, high. Note, a reliable team player. Exploit by targeting her protective instincts. Another drone zoomed in on the mountain zone. A girl with black hair and a spiky ponytail was creating a massive sheet of insulation. Momo Yayorozu. Creation. A powerful, versatile quirk, limited only by her understanding of molecular structures and her own self-confidence. Subject, Momo Yayorozu. Quirk, creation. Assessment, tremendous strategic potential, currently hampered by insecure tactical application. Psychological profile, prone to self-doubt when plans fail. exploit by applying unexpected pressure and breaking her confidence early in a confrontation. Threat level, potentially high. Then, a drone feed stabilized, and his breath caught for a fraction of a second. The ghost in his own machine, the echo of Izuku Midoriya, stirred in its shallow grave. The drone was focused on the central plaza, where Aizawa was still fighting. But his eyes were drawn to a trio of students who had avoided the warp. A girl with a brown bob and round cheeks, a tall boy with glasses and engines in his legs, and him, Katsuki Bakugo. Savant zoomed in, the high-fidelity camera capturing the familiar, arrogant sneer on Bakugo's face. He watched as Bakugo and another student, Kirishima, tried to attack Kurojairi. The explosions were as loud and arrogant as Savant remembered. Subject: Katsuki Bakugo. Quirk: explosion. Observation: high yield, short-range kinetic and thermal energy projection. Impressive power output and mobility. However, combat style is linear and emotionally driven. Over-reliance on a powerful right hook. Minimal tactical variation. Easily taunted into predictable attack patterns. For a heartbeat, the cold analytical flow was interrupted by a flash of memory. The smell of burnt sugar and caramel from Bakugo's palms. The searing heat on the collar of his own school uniform. The casual, cruel laughter. Useless Deku. Savant's hand clenched into a fist. The biometric sensors on his chair registered a fractional spike in his heart rate. He caught it, wrestled it down, and smothered it with cold, hard logic. That boy was Deku. Deku was dead. He was Savant. And Savant did not feel. He analyzed. He recontextualized the memory. The burn was a data point on pain tolerance. The laughter was an audio file demonstrating psychological bullying tactics. Bakugo wasn't a childhood tormentor. He was subject, Katsuki Bakugo, a future threat to be neutralized or a potential asset to be broken and repurposed. The flicker of emotion was gone, leaving only the chilling quiet of the nest. His attention was pulled back to the main plaza. Aizawa was finally being overwhelmed. Noma Alpha, on Shigaraki's command, had intervened. Savant watched with clinical detachment as the creature smashed Aizawa's head into the concrete. He tracked the hero's vitals, the cracking of bone, the spike of pain so intense it almost overloaded the audio sensors. It was brutal, savage, and an excellent demonstration of the Noma's raw, unthinking power. Noma Alpha has engaged Eraserhead, he reported to the air. Shock absorption and super-regeneration quirks are functioning at 98% efficiency. Subject is effectively immune to Eraserhead's primary combat style. See? Shigaraki's voice crackled in his ear, giddy with bloodlust. I told you he was the perfect final boss. He's breaking him like a cheap controller. Savant ignored the comment and focused on the data. The Noma was a success. But the primary test was yet to come. Where is All Might? He asked Kurojairi. I have been unable to ascertain his location, Kurojairi replied. One of the students, the one with engines, escaped. He is likely on his way to summon reinforcements. Savant processed this. His predictive models had accounted for a 73% probability of a student escaping to alert the school. This was within acceptable parameters. But All Might's absence was a deviation. Sensei's intelligence indicated All Might's presence was a certainty, Savant mused. There is a variable we have not accounted for. His mind raced. All Might's weakened state. Did he exhaust his time limit this morning? Probability, 68%. This complicates the primary experiment. Nomu Alpha is calibrated for a full-power opponent. Before he could run further simulations, a new variable announced its presence with the force of a hurricane. The doors to the USJ were blown inward, a cloud of dust and debris billowing into the facility. And there he stood. Not smiling. His face was a mask of cold, righteous fury. All Might. He's here! Shigaraki shrieked with delight. It's game time. On Savant's biometric monitor, Shigaraki's heart rate was a frantic, ecstatic scribble. In contrast, Savant's own remained a steady, rhythmic pulse. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on the screens. The experiment was about to reach its climax. Kurojairi, disengaged from the students. Returned to the plaza, Savant commanded. All ground units form a perimeter. Do not engage All Might directly. Your purpose is to funnel him towards Noma Alpha. The battle was short, brutal, and a treasure trove of data. All Might moved with a speed that was almost impossible to track, even with the drone's high-speed cameras. He took out the low-level thugs in a blur, a force of nature that defied conventional analysis. But Savant wasn't watching the hero. He was watching the data. He saw the almost imperceptible drop in All Might's velocity after each blow. He heard the faint wheeze in his breathing, picked up by the most sensitive microphones. He was powerful, yes, but he was also a burning star collapsing in on itself. Then came the confrontation. All Might versus Noma Alpha. It was a clash of titans. The force of their blows sent shockwaves that shattered windows throughout the facility. The drones were buffeted by the displaced air. Savant's audio sensors flatlined, overwhelmed by the sheer decibels of the impacts. Incredible, Savant whispered, his fingers flying across the console, isolating data streams, running real-time analysis. The Noma's shock absorption is dispersing nearly 100% of the kinetic energy from All Might's blows. He isn't injuring it. He's just moving it. Shigaraki's voice was a gleeful cackle. He can punch it all he wants. It won't work. My Noma was made to kill him. Negative, Savant corrected, his eyes narrowed in concentration. All Might is adapting. His attack pattern is changing. He's no longer aiming for knockout blows. He's testing its limits, just as we are testing his. He watched as All Might began to move faster, delivering hundreds of blows, not to damage the Nomu, but to overwhelm its ability to absorb the impacts. It was a brilliant, desperate strategy, and then Savant saw it. A fractional dip in the Noma's cellular regeneration rate. A tiny, almost insignificant system error in the complex biological machine he had helped design. All Might wasn't just punching harder, he was punching smarter. He had realized that the shock absorption had a limit, not of force, but of endurance. Predictive model update, Savant's mind raced. All Might has identified Noma Alpha's core weakness. Probability of Noma victory decreasing by 12% per minute. Current probability, 34% and falling. Asset is at risk. On the screen, Bakugo and several other students rejoined the fray, helping to pin down Kirojiri. The situation was deteriorating. The primary objective, gathering data on the Nomu against the top-tier hero, was complete. They had terabytes of it. The secondary objective, gathering data on the students, was also a success. Continuing the engagement offered diminishing returns at an exponentially increasing risk. Shigaraki, Savant said, his voice sharp and authoritative. The experiment is over. Order the retreat. What? Shigaraki screamed back, his voice filled with disbelief and rage. No! We're just getting to the good part. All Might is weakening. The Noma can still win. The Noma's regeneration is failing. The probability of its destruction is now 78%, Savant stated coldly. The other pro-heroes will be here in less than 3 minutes. To remain is to sacrifice our most valuable asset for your pride. I don't care about your stupid probabilities. Shigaraki snarled. We are the League of Villains. We don't run. All Might let out a roar that shook the entire dome. He had locked the Nomu in a suplex, his muscles straining. Hey, villain! Have you ever heard these words? Go beyond. Plus. Ultra. With a final, cataclysmic explosion of power, he drove the Nomu into the ground, then launched it out of the USJ entirely. It soared through the air, a tiny speck vanishing into the sky. The data stream from Noma Alpha flatlined. Asset lost. Savant felt a cold knot of fury in his stomach. A wasted resource. A colossal waste of time and effort, all because of Shigaraki's childish ego. But he suppressed it. Emotion was a liability. He recalibrated. New objective, asset preservation. The remaining pro-heroes were arriving. The game was well and truly over. Shigaraki, in a fit of pique, was being shot by the hero snipe. He was wounded, exposed, and vulnerable. Kirojiri, Savant's voice was like ice. Shigaraki is compromised. Your directive is now absolute. Abort the mission. Extract Shigaraki and any remaining assets. Now, but Savant-sama, Kurogyri began. That is an order, Kurogyri, Savant said, his voice dropping to a level of command that even All for One rarely used. Do you want to explain to Sensei how you allowed both his prized possessions to be lost in a single day? That did it. Kurogyri enveloped the wounded Shigaraki in his warp mist, shielding him from further harm. Shigaraki was still screaming, a furious, incoherent stream of curses. This isn't over, All Might. I'll kill you! This was your fault, Savant. You hear me? Your stupid plan. His voice was cut off as Kurogyri warped them away. The plaza was suddenly quiet, save for the panting of the exhausted hero and the murmurs of the terrified students. Savant leaned back in his chair, the mission a catastrophic failure in Shigaraki's eyes, but a qualified success in his. He had the data. He had hours of combat footage, biometrics, quirk analysis, and psychological profiles. He had a complete workup on Eraserhead and, most importantly, he had a definitive measure of a weakened All Might's current limits. He had learned the rules. He ran one final analysis, a thought experiment. If he had been on the ground, with his current knowledge, how would he have changed the outcome? The answer came instantly. He wouldn't have focused on All Might. He would have taken a student hostage. The one with the engine Zeta, or the girl with the gravity quirk, Uraraka. He would have leveraged All Might's heroism against him, forcing him into an impossible choice. He would have won, not by overpowering him, but by outthinking him. He looked at the main screen, where a triumphant but clearly exhausted All Might stood wreathed in steam. The symbol of peace. A pillar of a rotten society. And now, Savant had his exact measurements. He knew precisely where to place the charges to bring the whole thing down. He shut down the monitors one by one, plunging the nest into darkness. He didn't need to see Shigaraki to know he would be fuming, that he would blame Savant for the loss. It didn't matter. The child could have his tantrum. The general had his intelligence. And the war had just begun.